Next question comes from William, and this is one I've always wondered. Well, we deal with this on a daily basis. The traffic from First Street, even First Street, Fourth Street, all the way out to the bypass, especially at lunchtime. And the question is, are there any plans for a turning lane to be installed on Muskogee Avenue between First Street, and we think that means Fourth Street, and the bypass in the future? Just curious, and thank you.
Yeah.
And I think what we're talking about there is a center lane.
Is that section of Muskogee Avenue between about the beginning of the Plaza Shopping Center on the north end, all the way out to Chili's, Walmart, Reeser's, that major intersection with the bypass? Great question. Major challenge for this community. And I would point out that it's not only a challenge in that area, it is a challenge in many areas where our road system was developed through residential areas, and some of them were predominantly agricultural at the time when those roads were developed. And decades later, they have become major arterials for connection of things like, let's take, for instance, 4th Street's a good example. It connects the bypass from the east to the west, as does Allen Road on the north end of the community. When those roads were developed, they were developed to standards and widths that allowed only a certain amount of traffic to go through there. And I can assure everyone that for a very long period of time we have been acquiring additional easements on streets like Allen Road, where we currently have turn lane improvements underway. 4th Street, same thing. We have a project on 4th Street, East 4th Street, to add a turn lane. The real restriction to the question and the specific area that's of interest to this question is the commercial property that exists on either side. Everyone needs to remember that we're really talking about the public property is the roadway itself. On either side of that roadway exists private property. It would take millions of dollars for the city to acquire the additional property that would be needed to add a turn lane through that area. I suspect that will have to be a project that we focus on in the future. We are utilizing every available fund that we can obtain at either the federal level or the state level to supplement our road dollars with the city budget. But it's a great question. It's obviously one that's needed. We know it's a challenge in many areas. It hits kind of right on the money about the real significant traffic problems we have in a community where the streets were designed to one standard, and decades later their use is entirely different, and at least certainly from the volume of traffic there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for taking the time to answer questions that we have from our, these come actually from our Facebook, Tahlequah Facebook page. So the first question comes from Marcy, and it's concerning the old library, the Carnegie Building, and that was donated years ago.
And Marcy points out it was 1905 that it was donated.
Correct.
And it looks like it was set up with I think most of us know that's how it gets its name. It was set up with a grant from the Carnegie Foundation, Andrew Carnegie. We opened the doors in 1907.
Exactly. Question is, why isn't this building being used? It's deteriorating. Mold is taking over the walls and ceilings, or it needs work. And her question is, why is nothing being done with that building?
Well, and great question. It is certainly one of those few really historic structures that we have in the community that most of us can relate to as community members. I remember the librarian of 50 some odd years, Edna Gladney, and I remember her as a child, as a user of the library. The point of fact, though, is that the city, as owner of the building, and that is, it's important that everybody understand that the library is managed by the Eastern Oklahoma District Library System under an agreement with the city of Tahlequah. The city does own the library building. About 5 years ago, we made a very substantial investment in renovation and repairs to the building to address the water problems that have been long standing in that structure, and to prevent any further deterioration. The entire building was painted. The soffits and cornices were repaired from the outside. We hired an independent contractor to come in and do that work. And here, 5 years later, we know we have additional problems coming back in. We're putting about $200,000, though, this year into renovations of the main library, and we're going to continue to focus on the problems that the Carnegie Building has, and the repairs that are needed. I suspect that it is a level of repair that's going to require outside grant monies, will require outside consultants to really be able to pinpoint the source of the problem. And it's a 100-year-old plus building. I live in a 100-year-old house, and old structures have problems and maintenance issues. But I do want everybody to understand that it's not being ignored. It is being addressed, and the city does have a vested interest in making sure that that structure continues on. And by the way, it does get used on a weekly basis. The library has certain programs that it conducts in that building as we speak.
Next question comes from John, and his question is about recycling. Tahlequah Recycling has been operating for several months now. This service is available to businesses as well as residents. Do the City of Tahlequah offices participate in recycling? It's the first part of the question. And what percent of City of Tahlequah solid waste is diverted to recycling rather than ending up in a landfill?
Great question. Yes, the city does participate in recycling. In the city offices over on Cherokee Avenue, as well as down here off Water Avenue at the Army Municipal Center, we have big blue recycling bins next to the copy machines that serve the common interests of the staff and the office personnel of the city. All the paper waste goes into that. Other materials, that's predominantly the recyclable material that's generated in the office environment. The City of Tahlequah, of course, has for many years has had a community drop-off recycling center located down near the transfer station on South Basin Street, kind of southeast of the post office. And we just added plastics, as a matter of fact, to the mix of materials that we can handle down there. We'll take cardboard, all grades of paper, basically anything that's recyclable with the exception of glass. We're still this far removed as Tahlequah is from the proximity to a glass recycler in the state. We can't find a cost-effective way, as most other communities are also challenged with the same problem. We can't find a cost-effective way to be able to handle our glass material right now. We're still looking at options. We cracked the plastic nut, if you will. We have added number 1 and number 2 plastics. For most of us, that equates to soda pop bottles and milk jugs, laundry detergent containers, that sort of thing. Those are now being received from the public, and we handle all grades of metals at the recycling facility. In any event, combined with the private service that Tahlequah Recycling Incorporated provides its customers that it has in the city of Tahlequah, we looked at the results from their service as well as the city's here last month. And that equated to Tahlequah Recycling Inc. generated about, through their customers, about 4 tons of recyclables. The city's drop-off recycling center did about 14 tons of recyclables last month. So you combine those two numbers, and we think we're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3 to 4% diversion of materials from the landfill into recycling programs. Now, in addition to that, we have special programs during the year. We have every spring, and it's just tremendously successful. We have a special, what we call the Community Cleanup Day, but we have recycling incorporated into that. We receive waste tires from the members of the public, whether you live in the community or outside the community. And on a typical day, we will cleanup day, usually held the second weekend of April. We'll receive somewhere between 1,200 and 1,800 old tires that will be sent for recycling and reuse in the state. We also receive what we call household hazardous materials or household pollutants, cleaners and solvents and paints and batteries and just virtually all kinds of materials that many folks know this putting it in your regular bag of garbage is not the best option for that. So on that day, we receive those materials that have been collected and gathered up over the course of a year, and those again are either reused. The materials are either reused or they're recycled when they come in. Finally, the one thing I want to mention in the recycling arena, I think that people might be interested in, is that in Tahlequah, our wastewater sludge, processed through the sewage plant, basically, is composted, is turned into a reusable compost material in accordance with all the environmental and health standards that are set out by both the federal government and the state Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality. And that material is reused. So there is a very good deal of recycling that goes on in the city of Tahlequah right now.